Hello, friends. Captain Behnam here. Today is my first podcast. I'm really excited about this. As you guys know, I've had quite a following on social media, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram, and there have been a lot of questions that you've been asking me. Who is Captain Behnam? How did you get started? Where did you come from? What did you have to do to become a pilot for United Airlines and fly a Boeing 777? And of course, as all of you know, which I'm explaining this on my next video, what happened about the incidents on United 1175. I put together all your questions and I thought it would be a great way to have a very good friend of mine. His name is Jacob Narayan. He is an aspiring pilot. He's got about 1,000 hours of flight time. We've been friends for many years. We met in Hawaii. He's originally from Hawaii, lives with his beautiful wife in Utah. And I've been coaching Jacob to become a professional pilot. So I thought, it would be really cool to have a really a nice friend-to-friend conversation so all of you around the world can see and get a better understanding of who Captain Behnam is, what I had to do to get here. So having said all of that, I'd like to introduce you to my good friend, Jacob Narayan. He's sitting in his home in Utah, and go at it, Jacob.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Hey, I have to say, it is so great to know you, brother. So great to know you.
Thank
7 years ago, that plane came very close to going into the Pacific Ocean. And what an honor it is to know you and to think about those 380 souls that are alive today because of you. So many babies on that plane too. Can you tell me a little bit about the babies that were on the plane that day?
Yeah, there were 300. The airplane carries 364 people, but that day we had 381 souls on board. So the rest of them were babies under the age of 2 that we call lappers in the aviation lingo. They're lappers, they're souls on board, but they're not, you don't have the weight to count in a manifest, in a weight manifest. So we had 381 souls on board, and it was an incredible day. And I'm very happy to be here alive because my crew and I did a phenomenal job. And, by saving the 381 souls and saving the airplane, I like to share my stories, my defining moments, my struggles to the general public so they get an answer to all the questions that they have about who Captain Behnam is, what I have done, how did I get here.
Exactly. You and I had a chance to sit on the beach in Oahu and look out over the ocean where that plane came out of the clouds, and you made it to the runway. When I met you, through my uncle, who's also a 777 pilot, I saved your name under hero. So you're my hero. And
you're kind.
As you mentioned, I'm a 1,000-hour pilot. I'm just beginning the journey that you're just finishing. And,
yep.
It's a challenging journey. It's not easy. It takes a lot of tenacity. It takes a lot of focus. And I'm approaching it with a little bit of money in the bank in the United States, having resources, opportunities, mentorships. It was a different story for you. I mean, you started in a very, very different situation.
Yeah.
And what was it like for you, being in an Iran that was changing? Your father was considered an enemy to the state because of his positive view on democracy. You lost your dad. He was in and out of prison for a lot of that time. What was it like for you? And tell us a little bit about your father and how that dream was planted in your heart and in your relationship with him, and what it took for you to maintain a dream against so much opposition.
Well, I remember it as if it was yesterday. Like many families here, maybe the old days, 20 years ago, the parents would take the kids to the airport to look at airplanes take off and land. A dad that took myself and my 2 sisters to the Tehran International Airport, and I was 9 years old, and to watch airplanes take off and land, and I saw a Pan Am 747 take off. And that was it for me. I saw that big jumbo jet come off the ground, get airborne. And I said to myself and my dad and my mom and everybody that I'm going to be a pilot. I'm going to fly one of those things. And of course, being 9 years old, nobody takes you seriously, right? Nobody takes you seriously. I came very excited, told the rest of my friends and family and uncles, and everybody is like, yeah, whatever. Those guys are like gods. I mean, look at what they do. They fly those big, giant flying machines. They take them to the sky, and we don't think, you will ever be able to make it. Well, the dream was installed in me, and I always tell people in my motivation and leadership seminars, if you can't see something in your mind's eye, there is a way to do it. You might not have the confidence or the tools or the money to do it, but it's doable. Whatever you can imagine is possible to happen. And so I had to grow that. I had to just stay with it because, there were no motivational speakers those days. There were not many books in that country written about how to motivate yourself, how to go forward, how to establish a dream, how to get going. I just knew that inherently inside me, like some pilots say, the flying or aviation is in my blood, right? And it is right. When it's in your blood, it becomes a part of your DNA. And I know one thing about me is that I always tell myself, I will never be denied. I will always find a way, no matter what the obstacles are, how many stones somebody throws my way, I kick him out of the way and keep a focus forward and go forward. So what I did was I was going to school, and 2 years later, we are at some southern part of Tehran, the capital. As you know, I was born in Iran and spoke no English at all. I think it's a miracle that I can actually speak English and communicate my thoughts and everything to tens of thousands of people. And as you know, some of the videos been watched with over 40 million people, and be able to speak and tell people about my journey, my passion in English, which is not even my language I was born with. I was not privileged to do that. I had to learn that, and I had to perfect it. I had to get better. I had to become a better communicator. So age 11, my mom is visiting a friend, and there was an Air Force base, and they were doing training for the pilots. This is during the Shah's time, and they would basically take people up in a glider, and they had a cable. The cable would let go, and the glider would soar for a couple of minutes around the pattern. They come and land. And at that time, it was like, I don't know, maybe it was 20 cents or something for a ride. Like, we're talking about almost 50 years ago. And I kept telling my mom, pull her in scared, I got to do this. I got to do this. She's sitting here talking to her friend, and I'm looking at the windows, airplanes, and I'm like, I got to get out there and do it. Finally, one time that she's visiting her friend, she said, okay, she went and paid the 20 cents, and I got in that glider. And as soon as we got the airborne Jacob and the cable let go, and that airplane starts soaring with all the noise stuff, I wanted to push a button and just freeze that moment forever. I was not scared. I was not frightened. And I said, this is where I belong. This is what I need to do for my future. This is what I need to do. So I guess the next step was to apply to the Air Force. And I got rejected because I had the feeling I'm going through high school, and I wanted to, after high school, to go join a ROTC program to become an Air Force pilot. And they said, because you had a filling in your tooth, you disqualify. I'm like, what is a filling in a tooth has to do with passing a first-class medical?
Yeah.
But it's just baloney, right? It's just crazy. Later, I realized that they were only taking people in, who is who, and if they had, let's say, political connection to the Shah's regime or whatever, or your father was an admiral or a general or a senator or a congressman or, a rich person. And, we were not like that. We were just an average family.
And your father at one point was an ambassador.
Well, he became an ambassador. I'll tell you that the story. But what happened was, at that time, my dad was in the opposition against the Shah and his regime.
That's right.
And, by the time I left Iran, I was like 17 and a half, almost 18 years old. I got my diploma and left to go to England. I'll talk about that in a second. Half my life, my dad was in prison as a political prisoner, not because he was a bad guy, because of his belief he was put in prison. So I kind of grew up on my own, and all I had to rely on was my friends. And, friends, at the age of 10, 12, 15, 13 years old, they are not someone you look up to, or, they're your buddies, but they're not like, okay, kid, let me show you the path, how to become successful, how to go after your goals and dreams. All of that I had to self-generate from within. So I was rejected to go to the Air Force. And I put pressure on my mom and dad that you got to send me out of this country so I can go elsewhere to a different country, become a pilot.
So you went to England. You went to England, and there was more opportunities there. So now you have these opportunities in England, but that didn't work out either. Tell us about England and how you came short of that dream when you were in England.
Yeah. So what happened was basically I left in 1976. 3 years later, the revolution happened. I go to England, not speaking a word of, I mean, I spoke some words of English. I had a couple of American friends back in Iran, but my English wasn't that good. And it's like, I go there was a friend who lived in London and said, dude, I mean, you cannot get by anything here unless you learn the language. So I went and got registered at the ESL, English as a Second Language, in a town called Bournemouth, southwest of London, which is by the coast. It's just a great place. And that's where my passion for sailing and ocean also happened, that I really got drawn to the ocean. So I'm in England, learning to speak English, then had to go into the British system, getting my O-levels, and then go to university, do my A-levels. And 45 years ago, England was not like what it is now. If you go to Europe, whole Europe has changed. As far as the airline and aviation, there were only 3 airlines. One was British Caledonian, one was British Airways, and the other one was BOAC. And that was it. It wasn't like hundreds of airlines you see like EasyJet or Ryanair, and now every country has their own version of a major airline, their own version of a commuter, their own version of low-cost carriers. It wasn't like that at all.
Sure. And Virgin Airlines hadn't started yet. Richard Branson had pioneered that low-cost carrier option and kind of went against the norms to create things like that. It was very institutional. It was built on a class structure. It was built on opportunities were slim, few and far between. So you have this dream of immigrating to America. Tell us about that.
I mean, I'm in London. I mean, in England. I'm going to university, and one thing that really changed everything for me was, like any young guy, I liked sports car and good-looking women and stuff like that. And I saw one time I'm walking through the town of Newbury where I was going to college for my A-levels, and I saw a Lancia Monte Carlo. It's like, I don't know if you know what that is. It's an Italian sports car, and it was like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. Just really cool. And I wanted to know, who is this person that is driving this car? Plus, he had a beautiful blonde sitting next to him. So I ended up going to a grocery store to do shopping, and he's there with his girlfriend. And I said, I'm sorry, with my broken English and all of that. So I'm really, really sorry, but I need to ask you a question. Who are you? What do you do to drive this car? Because I love this type of car. And one day when I get to be older and mature and have, a decent income, I want to buy one of this. He says, well, I'm a 737 captain for British Airways. Wow. I said, wow, you're the man I need to talk to. Then I spilled my guts for him. I just told him who I am, what happened. I've been dreaming about being a pilot. I'm like 19 years old by now. And, I've been carrying this dream for 9 years. I'm here in England. I want to go to flight school. I want to learn to fly. And he said, son, England is not a place for you to do this. For what you have in mind, he said, there are not too many airlines here. You need to go to the United States. Go to the United States of America, because there are over 100 airlines. He mentioned Pan Am. He mentioned Eastern, TWA. He mentioned United, American, Delta. And he says, these are just the major airlines, and they're huge. I mean, right now, like if you think about United, how big it is, you can put British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, Lufthansa, and Air France together. It's still not the size of United. It's always been, that everything U.S. is bigger. And, so I said, okay. And he introduced me to a magazine called Flying Magazine. I started reading that magazine, and there's last page of that magazine, there's an article that I learned from flying from that. These are the incidents and accidents that general aviation guys got themselves into. Either it's a survive or crash. So there's an NTSB report. And I'm like, shit, this thing could be really dangerous. It's not as fun as I think it is. So I better be really good at it or don't get into it. Also, at the end of that magazine, there was advertisings for colleges and universities and flight schools in the United States. Oh, wow. Because as you know, Flying Magazine is from the U.S. So there was a company or an academy called Sierra Academy of Aeronautics in Oakland, California. I applied to them, and they said the course is going to take like $40,000. At that time, and the private pilot license was like $3,000. I had my mom and dad, send the money to put the down payment for this course so I could get an application and accepted by them, send them an application, get accepted, take the paperwork to United States Embassy, and get a student visa to come to the United States.
Nice. Nice.
So now, meanwhile, years have gone by from 76 to 79. The revolution happened. Shah gets toppled as he's leaving the country because he got scared that I'm going to lose my power. I'm going to lose the country. He asked the oppositions, including my dad and his organization, to join him to run the country as he was flooding the country. My dad and a couple of his friends chose not to be involved in running the country or becoming, the next president or vice president or minister. He took a job because I was out in England and my sister was living in Spain. He took a post as an ambassador, Iranian ambassador to Madrid, Spain.
So things are getting better for your family, but you're still stuck in England and you're trying to get to America.
At the same time, revolution is happening, happened, and there were U.S. hostages taken. And that's the time I'm applying for a visa as one of the bad guys to come to this country to go after my dream.
Enemy to the state, trying to get in the States, So he had this another level of opposition.
You know what happened, right? I was denied a visa. I did not get my visa. The first time I was denied. A few months later, I went back. The second time I was denied. The third time I was denied. But my perseverance, my enthusiasm was not being shattered. I said, no matter what, if I have to go to the United States of America, if I have to cross the Atlantic Ocean and swim there, I will get there. And that's why I tell people, when your definiteness of purpose is so big, when your passion is so big, when you are so motivated to do something, you will figure out the how. There's two important things I want people to know. There is a why and there is a how. If your why is big enough, the how will come. The how will show itself. So by not quitting and keep going back to the embassy every 6 months, this is like early 80s now, finally, the last interview, there was a lady. And women have been very, very instrumental in my life, Jacob. They've been extremely instrumental in my life. And this lady looked at me and says, look, I can see that your passport has been stamped 3 times with a red stamp saying denied, 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 and you're back here. Said, what is it that you want so bad? I said, I was born to be a pilot. I was born to be a 747 pilot. And I will not quit until I get to that point. She looked at me in the eyes and says, I believe you. I know you're going to do it. You got to make one promise to me. If I give you the visa, you go to the United States, do not depend on the government. Do not have your hand out. Ask for a hand up, but never raise your hand out for someone to give you something for nothing. Make something of yourself. Be someone that your parents, yourself, your family could be proud of, and do something positive for this world. And I promised her I'd do it. And she gave me the visa and I come to the United States. I was coming with my best friend, David Jones, who was my karate instructor. He was my martial arts instructor. He was British, and he says, hey, you leaving, I'm coming because I cannot stand it in England. And we both came to San Francisco and we landed, and he's like, now what? I never forget, Jacob. I had one suitcase and $200 in my pocket.
Wow.
I paid the down payment for going to Aviation Academy, but that was it.
You needed $40,000 at this point.
Right. The revolution happened. My dad was asked to go back to the country. He never made it through the airport. The new regime, Khomeini's regime, the current regime, took him and put him in prison. Now, think about this. In a matter of 7 or 8 years, he's imprisoned twice under 2 separate regimes. One was the Shah. Government comes in, asks him to go back to the country, say, well, Shah's gone. We are in charge. We're going to give you orders how to be ambassador, what to do, and, how to beat the drums going forward for this regime. But the thing was, they wanted to get him. It was a way for them to get him back to the country and put him in prison.
Because he believed democracy, correct? It's because his undying love and belief in democracy and freedom.
Yeah.
Caused him.
So he was actually in prison for 5 years. St. Evan Prison, the notorious Evan Prison. He was in prison again. And after my mom and sisters, it's a long story, but able to get him out of prison. He was under house arrest for another 14 years. So I didn't get to see my dad for 20 years. Meanwhile, I'm here with no money coming. So I go and register at Sierra Academy of Aeronautics, and I'm looking at the prices. Every time you go flying is $130, $140. So I'm going to run out this $3,000 really fast. There was a $4,000, I think, really fast. And I even get a private pilot license. Then what? Jacob, my world was shattered. Here I am with this big dream across from San Francisco Bay, the place that I always loved. And, I had San Francisco on my visual board and the Golden Gate Bridge, visiting Alcatraz, living in California. All of these things I was visualizing when I was in England, that I'm going to come to this country and do all of this. But here I am with absolutely no future. And I had this mountain, huge mountain I needed to climb. I just didn't know how. I remember I would get so frustrated. I'm 6'2". I weigh about 225, 227 pounds now. Jacob, I was 6'2". I weighed 160 pounds.
Wow.
I was literally living on $1 a day. I remember there was a track in San Leandro, near Oakland International. There was a park, marina, and a track, and I would go run. Jacob, I would run to a point that I would vomit because I was so scared about being alone. Imagine this. I mean, you're 17 years old. You say goodbye to all your family with the intention to go back. The revolution happens. You're not going to be able to go back. And you can't quit on your dream. If you quit on your dream, then what? What else are you going to quit on? There is a price to pay for success. I always tell people, there is absolutely a price you pay for success. There's no doubt about it. But I tell you what, the price that we pay for failure is far greater than the price we pay for success.
Yeah.
And that is why I say I never give up. That's why, one of the things that I always say is, people say, nothing is impossible. I say, impossible is nothing. If you really want it bad enough, if you see it in your mind's eye, you make it into a picture, you make it into a movie, you make it into a color movie. It goes from your head to your heart. You begin to believe it, that I can do this. Now your mind and the heart connect. You see it, you believe you can do it, and then it goes from there to your gut. That's what I call it, becomes passion, becomes burning desire. That's like you say, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it no matter what it is. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a movie, whether it is flying or becoming a doctor. And that's why I like to excite people and telling them my story that, hey, I'm just a regular guy. But because of everything happened in my life, I was put in a position to make a difference in 381 souls' life.
So you have this burning desire in you, but yet you have this mountain, this obstacle, this $40,000 obstacle. And, you found a way, and it's so remarkable as somebody who's training to be a pilot. You have what's called the ground instructor, and then you have what's called the flight instructor. And now the ground instructors don't necessarily have to physically know how to fly the plane. They can teach the theory of aviation. Yes. And so you spent a long time while you were saving up money and finding a way, just getting deep into the theory by being a ground instructor for how many years? And then once you did that, you used to get in the back seat of the plane and watch, right?
Yep.
You didn't have to pay anything to observe.
Yeah. So you see, as you think, so you create. Because I was at the stage of my life that I couldn't do it. I mean, it was a lot bigger than me. It was a lot bigger than me. I had to create something in my own head. There were no simulators there. There were no online courses then. I remember that I bought a poster of 172, put it on the wall, and I bought pieces of wood and created a stick for myself, a yoke, and rudder pedals. And I would visualize every maneuver that I was supposed to do in the airplane. I would look at the instruments, see that paper poster take off, roll down the runway, bring their nose up to, 10 degrees, get airborne. And then this is how you turn. This is how you climb. This is how you do this. I had to do that in my head. I was becoming my own motivator and simulator instructor, teaching me in simulation that didn't even exist except for major airlines. So to answer your question, I don't have a lot of friends in life, Jacob. I only have maybe a handful of friends, but these are friends forever. Art Smith, my flight instructor at the time, who is still a good friend of mine, As a matter of fact, I made it all the way to United. He still was a flight instructor. And we talked and he says, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I sent him a recommendation. Then he became a pilot for United and retired as a 787 captain. Now he's my skiing buddy. He lives in Lake Tahoe and we go ski, a few times a year together. So Art told me, look, I said, this is how it works. You got to do ground school, and then you do flight training, and then you get the check ride. Then you go to another segment, which is again ground school, flight training, and a check ride, and so on and so on and so on. So you got to do your ground school, and in order to become better and he said, you don't want to spend time in the air when you can spend it on the ground for the things that I'm teaching other guys. He said, go get all your ground structure, all your ground school out of the way. So I got my PPA private, commercial, instrument, multi-engine, even ATP done within the first 2 or 3 months. I was living on $1 a day. I had no choice. I literally had no choice. I remember the first place that I went to live after Dave and I stayed in Shangri-La in San Francisco. It was like a motel owned by some wonderful Indian guys. It was something like $40 a week in San Francisco. This is like 45 years ago. So we had the place for a month. So they said, okay, we're going to go around. We're going to go party. We're going to see Golden Gate. We're going to see California a little bit because come this day, I'm going to school and I'm going to focus on school and nothing else. I remember that towards the end of that 1 month, we were somewhere having dinner. There's some music going on. And I met this Asian lady and we became friends. And I'm telling her about who I am, what I'm doing. And I'm in Oakland and we're running out of time in our hotel or motel, a few more days, and we got to look for something else. She said, well, my cousin, Ron Tom, that's the first American that I met who was Chinese American, had 2 first names, Ron Tom. He's a good friend of mine still. He lives in San Leandro, and that's only about 5-6 miles away from Oakland International. He's got a 2-bedroom. You can room with him for practically to nothing. So I said, great. Dave and I met with Ron. Ron's dad had a grocery store in San Leandro. And he says, you can stay with me for like $100 a month. All of a sudden, I have a room and a roof on my head. Yeah. I said, things are beginning to move in the right direction. And Ron also had a moped that was in the garage. He said, hasn't ran it for many years. And I don't know, I didn't tell you, but people in social media know that I used to drive motocross. And as a matter of fact, I had a really major accident at age 16 where I passed out and they took me to the hospital and I could hear the doctor tell my mom, this kid would never walk again because, I hyperextended my neck. I could not, for 15, 20 minutes, Jacob, I could not move my fingers or have any sensation from neck down. They said, you're paralyzed for the rest of your life. I refused to believe that. Doctor said, you'd never walk again. Not only I walked, I ran, I played football, I did martial arts, and became a 747 and 777 captain. Do not subscribe to these naysayers. I always say, find naysayers and run away from them. Walk away. I used to say walk away, but then I said run away from them. So Ron gives me this, says, there is this moped, is yours if you want it, if you can get it to run. And knowing mechanical things, because I had motorcycles in the past, I got that sucker started, and now I have transportation back and forth to school. And well, that thing lasted only a few months. And Ron worked at Dad's grocery store. He never went to college. He said, I really love what you're doing. I love your passion. I love your enthusiasm. It seems like nobody's going to stop you. And he threw a couple of challenges my way. I never forget. It was my commercial grant school. The test that I had to take. He said, if you score more than 95, I'm going to take you out to a steak dinner. A free dinner? Almost a year of not being able to eat something decent. Literally, there was no money. And I got 100%. Not only I got a steak dinner, at that dinner, I met a girl. And she happened to work for Bank of America. And we became girlfriend and boyfriend. And then we got engaged. It didn't work out. It's a long story. I'll be talking about that later. But because she worked at Bank of America and I told her my story, she said, I'm going to teach you how to build credit. We started with Chevron card. Then we started with the Macy's card, then the JCPenney card. And I started building credit so I could borrow money to do the schooling. Meanwhile, Art told me, Now that you've done all your grant schools, go ahead and get all your grant instructor licenses, AGI, Advanced Grant Instructor. With that, I was able to teach and make $8 an hour. So I'm teaching grant school. And then I realized that these guys are going up. My instructor, Art, is going up with student is a Cessna 172. The 2 seats in the back are empty. And whatever he's teaching them, because, we do the hangar flying. After the student comes and says, hey, what did you guys do up there? He said, we did the stalls, we did steep turns, we did turnabout point and S-turns. And I'm like, he's going to be teaching me the same thing because the curriculum is always the same, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe I should ask the instructors to allow me to sit in the back and take notes.
Yeah, perfect.
By doing that, Jacob, like the fear you have when the airplane nose come up and the stalls or your steep turn or you go into a spin. I already lived through all of that. I knew what to expect. Plus, I would write then, okay, this is how you do a steep turn. Clear left, clear right. Power this, attitude this. Turn your bank to 45 degrees of bank. Add power. Don't lose altitude. All of this I would write and would practice at night.
Yeah.
So, and that's why when an aspiring pilot tells me I'm getting hired by United or interview or I'm going to training on a 7.3 or 7.5, what do you recommend I do? I said, know your profiles, memorize them so you don't have to think about it when you're in the cockpit. It should become second nature. If it's second nature, then it's easy. So I would write all of these things down, Jacob. I would go up there. I'm not special, but I can tell you one thing, because I was desperate, I had to, and I didn't have the money. All my flying, if it was 40 hours for a simulator, for private pilot, I probably got my private pilot by 52 hours. But anything beyond that, I was within 10% of minimum. There are some guys that are flying 80, 100 hours. They still don't have their license, private license. Or for their instruments, instead of 40 hours, they're doing 80 or 100 hours. But because I was desperate, because I had nothing else to look forward in life except becoming a professional pilot, everything I did was at minimum. And because I sat back and I watched other people make mistakes, I was not making the mistakes.
So your proficiency came as a result of the challenges that you were facing. And so that helped you to fine tune. So when you landed that airplane after that 40-minute emergency, you said it was the best landing you ever made.
Yeah, because you know what? I was manifesting the landing from 36,000 feet. I was already visualizing me and that airplane touching down. And that would be the best landing in my life. If I walk away from it and never get in the cockpit of that jet, that would be my best landing. And it was. Even some of the passengers, they said that was smooth. We didn't even feel touchdown. And nobody even broke a fingernail. Going back to this, Jacob, guess how many hours it took me to get my multi-engine?
Normally it takes about 25.
I did it in 4.5 hours. I had 20 hours in a back seat.
Yeah.
Everything, by that time, you got 250 hours, you got your commercial license. I already am a CFI, and then I became a double I in teaching instruments. Then I went into multi-engine. I had like 25, 30 hours in a back seat, but the second and third lesson, the instructor said, there's nothing else I can teach you. If you feel confident and you're not scared of FAA and you don't have check ride phobia, then go take it. And I did. Because the FAA examiner had already tested me for private, for instrument, for commercial, for CFI, for double I. It went just like that.
Yeah.
It was that simple. Yeah. That's what I'm telling people. If you want something bad enough, you always figure out how to do it.
Something our friend Barry Navidi, the film producer, the best wine comes from the grapes that suffer, the grapes that grow in the difficult ground, the grapes that grow during a drought, the grapes that grow during a fire, that struggle.
Yeah.
And, the best wine comes from the grapes that struggle.
Yeah. Somebody told me you're like a block, you square block. And whether it's life, whether it's family, whether it's society, you got to keep, sand in the corners so it becomes like a bowling ball that you can throw it, because the square is not going to go far.
Yeah.
But if it's a bowling ball, it can slide and go forward.
Yeah, and all of that opposition that you were facing, it was chipping away at the corners and turning you into your rough stone into a diamond, and you come out of this experience, this tremendous opposition, and end up becoming the youngest pilot ever hired at United Airlines. Tell us
But
about that
not the
interview
youngest
process.
pilot ever hired, but the youngest pilot who flew 747 and at the age of 28. So the dream started at age 9. I go to the flight instructor. Now I am a flight instructor. Guess what I had to do? Jacob, I had 3 jobs in one day. I got a job flying canceled check for First Interstate Bank from Hayward, California to Marin County, Knox Field. I would get up 4 o'clock in the morning, be at the airport by 5. My ex-fiancée would make me a sandwich. I would fly from 5 o'clock, fly over the bay, because, you know, the marine layer here always, you know, that gets foggy. Knoxville had no approaches. So I would shoot an ILS approach into Napa, get under the clouds, break off, go over the shore at 500 feet. That's the minimum you can maintain. At 500 feet, I would go towards Knoxville. There was a radio station, and I created my own NDB approach by keeping the tower on my left at 90 degrees, then 80, then 70, then 60, then 40, and go around it, but keeping at the tower until I got lined up with the final and land legally.
Yeah. Flying canceled checks in the fog at 4 in the morning.
Legally. And then I would sit in Knoxville, you know, just sucking my thumb, nothing to do. And there were 2 flight schools. One was Piper, one was Cessna. And because I was already flying Cessna, when I talked to them, begged them, finally they gave me a couple of students. So now I'm flying to Knoxville. I got a couple of students there. I'm making a little bit of money. I'm building up flight time. I would fly back to Hayward at 5 p.m., 12 hours later, and I had 2 of my own students between 6 and 9 p.m., and then I would go home, get a few hours sleep, and do it again. Except now I'm building up time, 80, 100 hours a month, working towards my ATP, but I needed twin engine time, and people could not afford to fly twin engine. So there was a Cessna 402C that would land in Hayward every night. I was going out with a student. So I made a point to talk to that pilot. His name was Steve. And I said, what do you do? He said, well, the company's based in Seattle. We fly from Seattle to Hayward. Same thing, cancel checks. From Seattle to Reno, and then I stay in Reno. Somebody else takes it to Las Vegas and brings it back to Reno. He flies Reno to Hayward and then to Seattle. I said, look, if you guys ever looking for a pilot, here's my resume. And I would give him my resume and say, oh, sure, I give it to the chief pilot. Week after week after week after week, I see Steve come. He said, how's it going? Great. Say, hey, look, here's a new resume. I got another 50 hours. I got another 100 hours. How's the chief pilot doing, you know? He said, great. Say, does he have my resume? Oh, yeah. But we don't need pilots now. But when the time comes, he'll contact you. This went on for 3 months. Never heard back from a chief pilot. So one day I go back to the airport, or I'm at the airport at the fuel depot, and I see a different pilot. And I said, I want to introduce myself. His name was Tom. I said, you know, I told him who I was, and I was talking to Steve and giving him a resume to give to the chief pilot. He said, I'm the chief pilot. I said, really? I said, did you ever see my resume? He never gave it to the chief pilot. Yeah. And I said, so why are you the chief pilot flying this airplane? He said, well, Steve quit to go work for someone else, and we don't have a pilot. I said, hello? He said, you want the job? Jump in the airplane right now. You are a CFI, you're a CFII, you got an MEL, jump in the airplane, you got your ATP. I might have said I didn't have the ATP. I did have the ATP. I just didn't have enough multi-time to get on hired by commuter airline, West Air. And they were flying 402s. And I needed minimum 50 to 75 hours to be able to apply to them. He said, if you want the job, jump in. And you're going to sit on the left seat. Jacob, Cessna 402, 9-seater or 10-seater. It looked to me like a 747. Yeah. It was big. My knees are shaking. I'm scared. I can't do this. He said, we're going to fly to Reno, and I'm going to check you out, and you fly it back. Or if you think you can't do it by the time we land in Reno, then, you know, tomorrow I'll bring you back, and it's okay. And I'm like, I told my students, something's come up. I got to do this. I got my flight bag, I got my headset. I jumped on the left seat of that. He tells me how to start it. I read the checklist. We take off. You know, I'm already teaching on Cessna, on Piper Apaches. I'm Cessna 310. I'm an instructor. So it came in easy. So I was going to climb up to 13,000 feet, 1,000 feet to cross the mountain. So, oh, no, 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 no. We got to follow Highway 80 to Reno through the mountain peaks. I said, why do we do this? So you got to get this airplane to the destination and back.
I know that route. You go through Dahmer Pass. You've got a lot of treacherous.
Jacob, there was no de-icer booth on that airplane. There was no radar on that airplane. And you know, the thunderstorm in the middle of the summers. I remember one time I had to go up to 11, 12,000 feet. Okay, so I go to Reno. He signs me off. I sit on this couch with the FBO owner's dog for 2 hours. At 2:30 in the morning, I fly back, get to Hayward about 3:30, and then I go home, take a shower, come back to do the check run for First Interstate Bank. So I was doing that, teaching during the day and teaching my own students, one student at night. And after around 9, 10 o'clock at night, I would take off for Reno to spend 3 hours on the couch, come back. I had literally 3 or 4 jobs, and each one was paying me money. I'm making like $40, $50 an hour. And then to build up the multi-time, which I did.
You did all of this without Red Bull. Red Bull hadn't been invented yet.
Exactly. No Red Bull, man. No Red Bull. And then, so I built up the flight time, and I applied to West Air Commuter in Chico, California. I got enough time. I applied. They say come. They didn't say come for an interview. I was not getting a response back. So one time, the airplane, one of the 172s, we needed to some maintenance flying. I took that all the way to Chico, landed at 7 a.m. in the terminal, waiting for the chief pilot to show up. The chief pilot came in. His name was Mike DiVincenzi. All my friends who were working there, people I've talked to, we used to call him Mad Dog because he was always angry. There was a bulky guy, and he comes in, and I introduced myself. As soon as he went to it, I didn't know who he was, what he looked like. But as soon as he said, going to flight operation, put in the door, I introduced myself. I said, you must be the chief pilot. Are you Mr. DiVincenzi? He says, I am. I said, my name is Christopher Behnam. I have been applying to you guys for many times. He said, do you have an interview? I said, I do not. I just thought I'd come up and introduce myself. He said, I have a very busy day. Why don't you take a seat and I'll get to you? Jacob, that was at 7:30 in the morning. He said to take a seat. At 5:30 in the afternoon, he comes out, looks at me, he said, you still here? I said, yes, sir. He said, why? I said, you told me to sit here and wait for you. And I'm here waiting for you, Mr. DiVincenzi. He said, you really want this job? I said, this job is like air for me that I breathe. This is like food. This is my oxygen. He says, we only pay co-pilot. We got to be hired as a co-pilot. You're telling me you got 4 jobs making $50 an hour, $10 at each job, whatever. You're going to go to $8 an hour. I said, I don't care. I want to work for West Air, be the best pilot for them. They had 48 pilots that he hires me on the spot on a right seat of a Cessna 402, 48 pilots, bunch of twin Cessna 402s and 2 twin. A year later, they become United Express. They start exploding. They buy Shorts 330. They buy Shorts 360. Now we have a flight attendant. We moved from Chico to Fresno, California. That's where I met my wife at the time. And so I started flying 100 hours a month as a co-pilot. I remember, not me, but somebody in the training in the grad school told the owner, we're becoming professional pilots. You're giving us uniform. And we're going to San Francisco shooting ILS approaches. But $8 an hour? Come on. There were guys, we were qualifying for food stamp at the time. And you know what his answer was, the owner's answer? Don't like it, leave.
Yeah.
There is someone who would do this job for less.
It's an opportunity. Somebody would do it for free.
At that point, I told myself, I'll grow with this company as much as I can. Yeah. But my dream still is United. Yeah. So I flew for them. I went from right seat of 402 to the right seat of a Shorts 330, and then became a captain on Shorts 360.
Yeah, right.
I'm a full-fledged 4-star captain, flying in and out of complex aerospace, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, San Diego, keeping it safe. And by the time United, during this time, Jacob, my ex-wife, girlfriend at the time, and we were sending resumes to all the airlines around the world. I was sending 300 resumes a month, Jacob. to all the airlines, from Cathay Pacific to British Airways to Air Djibouti or Somalian Airways to Qatar Airways. And you know what? Nobody would even bother to write me back, say no, thank you.
Yeah.
I wasn't even on their radar. I wasn't even worth their time. And I remember, remember the old days you would go buy the stamps and lick it?
Yeah.
Put it at the paper. I would lick this. I mean, to the point that our lips and tongue were like swollen. But resumes after resumes, every month, I would send it to all this, handwrite all of these things, send it out. And it went from nothing to 3 or 4 no's. And I told my wife at the time that we are on the right track.
Yeah.
Because now they're on the radar. And it went from absolute no answers to a bunch of no's to some maybes. And then a request for interview was granted by Pan Am, by Eastern, by American, by TWA, by United Airlines. And my dream, having practically, I want to say, grew up in the Bay Area because I was such a young, impressionist kid when I came to California, San Francisco, Oakland. I never forget. Remember the old days, there was no TSA, right?
Yeah, you just walk in.
Walk in, and there was a 747, Jacob, sitting at gate 80 in San Fran, a rope star, the long, old 747. And all it did was flew San Francisco, Honolulu, and Honolulu back. I think it was flight 200 and coming back at 201, something like that. And I always visualized myself in the cockpit of that jet, flying for United, leaving at that gate, landing in Honolulu, and coming back. And when I became a co-pilot for West Air, and then the captain, and we had jump seat agreements with United because we were United Express, the first thing I did was jump seated on that 747 to Honolulu. Yeah. So I went to your hometown and said, wow, this is it. So for the last 40 years, I've been flying to Honolulu.
But tell me about the interview. Tell me about the interview with United. You get this interview.
The interview with United. So my dream was to fly for United and be a 747 pilot and captain eventually for United Airlines. No other airlines mattered. And United was the only airline I applied for, and I got hired. So at that time, the strike of 1985 had happened. United pilots got fired, okay? And United started rehiring, some people who broke the strikes and stuff like that. There were 16,000 applicants, Jacob, out of 16,800 people, 1 in every 200. I never forget that in my interview, and it wasn't like just, okay, few questions, this and that. No, you had to go do an aeronautical test first. It was a 3 or 4 day thing. The next day, you would do a medical. The next day, you would do the sim. And the next day, you do the interview. So I remember at the hotel at Cherry Creek in Denver, there were slots by the front desk, and it was a white envelope and a brown envelope. Now, you try to go to the front desk, you try to close your eyes, a corner of your eyes, so you don't see those mailboxes, because if you knew exactly where your name was in one of those slots, 5 from the bottom to the right, because you look at it, it's like, if it's a white envelope, you wash that. If it's a brown envelope, you go to the next stage, the next day.
Wow.
There were 16,000 applicants. They hired 800, and yours truly was one of them. And the captain interviewer asked me this question. As you can see, we got fighter pilots out there, Navy pilots, hot dogs and corporate guys, other airlines, people coming from Pan Am because Pan Am was going under, WA was not doing good. From other airlines that are coming to us, why should we hire you, a foreigner, a naturalized citizen? But because by that time, because of my wife and all of that, I became citizen and all of that. Why should we hire you when we have so many good applicants and qualified applicants? I said, they are qualified. They probably are a lot better than me. But the enthusiasm that I have, I told them the story since 9 years old. This has been my dream to fly 747. And when I came to this country at the age of 20, you got to understand this. By this time, I'm like only 25 years old. At the age of 20, when I saw United Airlines out of San Francisco, that was it for me. That was another defining moment. Not only I wanted to be a pilot, and a 747 pilot had to be for United Airlines. I wasn't going to be denied. I said, the enthusiasm I have about this job is more and far greater than anybody else out there. So I tell everybody, if you're going for an interview, be really, really enthusiastic. Do the research on your company you want to work for. Find out what is they proud of, and you focus on that, and you focus on yourself. And sell yourself the way you have never sold yourself before.
They say that happiness is a spark that enkindles enthusiasm, and enthusiasm is the fire that ignites success. And so you go in there with all of this fire, this burning in your belly to work for the specific airline, and they say, why would we hire you? And what did you say?
Well, if you hire me, so first I said, if I don't get selected, I'm going to be back here 6 months. I'm going to reapply because that's what the law is, right? I said, look, I was denied a visa to come to this country. I could have got into my comfort zone and stay in England, give it up and go do this, go do that. But I said, I just don't quit. I went after my visa over and over and over. I came here with $200 in my pocket. Now I have the honor to sit down with the most prestigious airline in the world and be an interview, not as a co-pilot. At that time, second officer, right? Because even though you're captain for another airline, you get hired by United, that flight engineers. You will not even be a pilot. You would get hired as a flight engineer on a 727 or DC-10 or DC-8 at the time. And then you move to the right seat of a small airplane, then work your way up. And then you make captain. But I say you are hiring captains. Eventually, you're looking at me as a captain. And I promise you, you hire me, I'll be the best captain United ever had. And I truly believe that I got to prove that in 2018 by saving 381 lives and 381 souls. People have told me that would have been a $7-8 billion lawsuit against United if we crashed into the ocean and killed everybody.
It would have been the biggest aviation disaster since 2001.
No, it would have been the biggest aviation disaster in U.S. history involving one airplane with that many people.
You don't give up. You've had your back to the wall so many times. And being in an impossible situation is nothing to you. You know what that's like. And where other pilots, even really good pilots, would have practiced that resignation, they could have given up, even subconsciously in their minds. What's next for you now? You've retired. And you're a motivational speaker. You've got a movie deal. You got this podcast. You've got this amazing following. What are some of your intentions now? What do you visualize for yourself now?
Well, let me start with this. Let me start with the book, a little marketing and advertising tool. People who want to know about what really happened up there. The book is called Date with Destiny, the untold story of United 1175 and the man who saved it. As you know, Jacob, by the way, this is available on Amazon around the world. And we also have the Farsi version of it, Persian, again, available on Amazon. This is in the audio tapes already. And you can hear it on Spotify and other places and buy the audio. The English one, a really good friend of mine, Gomeshi from Rock Media in Toronto, Canada, got a beautiful voice doing the narration. And this audio version is going to be out soon. They're both available. The reason the book came about, because what we experienced up in United 1175, the shaking of the aircraft, the aerodynamic challenge that we had. We did stuff, which I've explained this on my next video, is all about United 1175. So guys, if you're joining me on YouTube or you're joining me as this new podcast beginning to take up or social media, and you really want to know what happened, hear it from the horse's mouth. The captain who, with the help of his wonderful professional crew members, saved that 381 souls. Watch my next podcast. You're going to hear everything that happened in the cockpit from me, from myself. So the challenge was that, Jacob, the severity of the problem was so, when they got the information from the flight data recorder and fed it into the simulator, it would literally tear up the simulator jacks from the concrete. They said to me, Captain, we cannot practice this. I said, well, dial it down from 100% to 75 to 50%. They did that and said, look, this simulator is going to run 24/7. If we feed this information in, what happened to you up there, to teach other guys, because you learn a lot from other people's mistakes. You can teach other pilots. They don't have to experience the same thing. They can watch a video or practice it in the simulator, except what happened to us could not be duplicated because it would damage the $15 million simulator. So Dr. Tony Kern, who does the CBT for United, he thought there was such a valuable lesson here because I already did, out of my own pocket, I did the animation for this. So that animation just took off like crazy. And it is on my YouTube. And Juan Brand, my buddy Juan Brand, Blanco Oluria, he did a phenomenal interview with me. One is with me with 44 minutes just talking about the incident, and the other one shows the animation. So a lot of people, a lot of professional pilots around the world have seen that. And as a matter of fact, when my incident happened the second time with Captain Stevenson's, who took off from Denver and the engine blew up, when I met him and we talked, which is on my social media and is on my Instagram, he said, Christopher, I watched your videos.
Really?
And when this happened, I knew exactly what I had. See, what happened to us was a surprise. And because of that, United came up with checklists, doing this and doing that. He said he knew exactly what happened. So that has saved people's lives already because of the animation. And when Dr. Tony Kern saw the animation, he said, I want to put this in United curriculum. And we have CBT, computer-based training, A, B, C. And he said, I want to put it there. Okay. So he started interviewing me, and the theme became focus forward.
Yeah, focus forward.
Because he said one thing you said, and this is another compliment that my crew gave me. They said that Captain Behnam was in such control of the jet and keeping the cockpit calm and collected, so we were not fearing for our life anymore. And every 5 minutes, Captain Behnam would turn around and say, forget what just happened, focus forward. So that became the driving force in the theme, and that's what I do in my leadership seminars.
So when life blows up on you, when you're facing an inevitable disaster in your corporation, in your job, in your personal life, people can look to you and follow the same steps that you took, And what are some of those steps? You talk about focusing forward. You talk about not panicking. You talk about, I've had some close calls, and I developed an ABC: assume the worst, breathe, go to your checklist. What are some of the things that you've learned, and what do you share with people in your keynote speeches?
Well, one of my heroes that was a hero to my dad is Winston Churchill, because one of the speeches he did is that you'd never give up. And there's another thing that he says that it really resonates with me. He said, there comes a time in your life that you're tapped on the shoulder to step up and do something great. How sad would it be when you get that tap in the shoulder, you're not prepared for what could be your greatest moment. And you see that in politicians. You see politicians running countries, they're not qualified. Or you see CEOs running companies, they're not qualified. Or they hire someone to do a job is not qualified. How sad would it be? So for me, learning the lessons of not giving up, not being a mediocre, always sharpening the saw. I mean, I didn't have to go do acrobatic flying, but I thought if I do acrobatic flying, I'm going to become a better pilot. By increasing my aeronautical knowledge, it's going to make me a better pilot. By doing martial arts and meditation and being centered, it's going to make me a better pilot. I mean, I could have totally given up, but the doctor told my mom, this boy would never walk. I have to refuse to believe that and accept that. As you know, Jacob, and I've shown you that, you've seen the pictures. Amir's, my director, is going to put some of those images here. I balance rocks. I tell everybody that everything in life has a balance point, even a dead rock. And I stand there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour, and I get this big giant rock and balance it on another rock. And I let go and it stays there. It's an amazing thing. People look at it, they're in awe. How can you do that? Well, I can. And I'm not talking about I got to show you. I'm not talking about balancing rocks like this, 5 or 10 of them. I balance like this, It's just like on one edge. And this giant stone is on top of another stone. And it just stayed balanced. I didn't know everything I have done in life that would be tested one day. I have talked to many pilot friends. Some of them even tell me that they wish something would happen to them, that they could save the day, they could save lives. I never wished for this to happen, but I know me and my crew were the right people when it did happen to.
In your book called Date with Destiny for that reason, Date with Destiny.
And, there are heroes among us everywhere. And I'm going to be doing interviews in this podcast and the podcast going forward. Aviation experts, business experts, first responders. And I also want to interview ordinary people, Jacob, who have done tremendous things with their own lives or affected other people's. These are the unseen heroes. They have tremendous story to tell. And I'm telling people right now, if you have a great story, you don't have to be a celebrity. You don't have to be Michael Jordan. You don't have to be Brad Pitt. That's what we see in this society. Big names, they're in front of you all the time.
Everybody has a story.
Everyday heroes are amongst us, and I want to interview them. So, guys, if you want to be on Captain Behnam's podcast, if you want your story to be told, go to CaptainBehnam.com, send us an email. I'm already getting emails. Tell us, let me talk to you. Let me, part of my team or crew, talk to you. Say, what is your story? And the best stories going to be on this podcast, going to be watched by millions and millions of people.
Lives. The greatest measure of success is how many people we help along the way. You've been successful in so many ways, but you've also been successful in how you've helped me. And you've given me the tools to stay true to my vision and my destiny as a pilot. What was it at the end of the day that got you home? That, you had to save this small town that was behind you. But what was it that got you home that day, Captain Behnam?
I think I always tell people power of decisions. Never underestimate a power of decision. Sometimes it might take you a month, 3 months, 5 years to make a decision. Or say it could take 3 seconds. Once you make that decision, you just change course. Now you're going on a different tangent, different future, different destiny. That day I made one decision. Today is not the day we're going to die, because having the responsibility for 381 souls on board, being tested to the point of practically breakdown, becoming a test pilot, doing stuff that there is no checklist for it. I mean, there are aviation experts that have been interviewed, that these guys, what they did up there is no checklist for it. How did I have to create a new envelope? All of this is, guys, advertising for my next video about United 1175. Go there and watch it. The stuff that happened up there that we have never experienced, there was not even a checklist for it in United manuals. That decision that day, today is not the day I'm going to die, or we're going to die. And plus I had a dad who was suffering from cancer in hospital, didn't have much time left. And I told myself, I have not said my goodbyes. Lord, allow me to get this airplane safely on the ground. Help me. And it was bigger than me, Jacob. It was bigger than all of us. And I really had to really pray that we get down safely on the ground. And I want to say my goodbyes to my dad. I remember when we landed, I told my family, my mom, sister, do not tell him anything. I don't want him to worry, because I don't know when I'll be able to see him, because United just shut us down. Like you're in Honolulu, you're not talking to anybody. Don't tell what happened. Don't talk to media. It was 2 days later, we came back to California. I'm just going through this whole emotional thing myself. A couple of days later, I went to the hospital, saw my dad, told him the story. He says, I knew, son, you got that champion blood. You have that fighting blood that I have in you. I knew you're not going to quit on them, and you were not going to betray their trust. My dad talked a lot about trust and conviction and doing the right thing by all people. And I said, yeah, I mean, Jacob, when you buy an airline ticket, you go see your kids back and forth. You're always telling me you're at this airport, that airport, flying. When you buy an airline ticket, you're not buying anything tangible. It's not the jacket you're wearing. It's not this cup that I'm holding. It's not this microphone. It's not a car. You're only buying a promise that the pilots will take you from point A to point B safely. There's nothing tangible. And I take that responsibility very, very seriously. I wasn't going to betray the trust of those 381 souls. It's just things like that. It might be very small, but I said I made a decision that today is not the day we're going to die. It's a small decision, but it's just like a cone, right? It's a hole here, but it's like a megaphone. It opens up, because the big picture at the end, everything changed by making that small decision. Whether you're a leader for a business, what is your outlook? What's your manifestation? What are you looking at? Who's your team? How do you lead your team in case of fear, in case of absolute disaster? How do you foresee if you go this way, what is it going to take you? Over the cliff or over the runway? We didn't have one emergency, Jacob. It wasn't just engine blowing up or shutting down. It was just like 8 emergencies going on. The blade actually came and hit the fuselage. I mean, how can you explain that if you don't have faith that didn't go through the window? If we depressurize 200 miles out and the checklist says, descend to 10,000 feet so people can survive, I could not drag that airplane for 200 miles at 10,000 feet because she couldn't maintain altitude. We were up here and Honolulu was here, and we were gonna meet the earth at some point. If I didn't calculate things correctly, instead of 1,000 to 1,200 feet per minute descent, if I was coming down just like jetliners at 4,000 feet a minute, you hit 10,000 feet, 100 miles out. Now what? Stalling the airplane, having enough. You can't go slow because you stall. You can't go too fast because things are going to fall apart. All of that comes together, and being resilient, not giving up under pressure, leadership under pressure. When everything goes wrong, how do you focus forward? But everything's falling apart. How can you just see everything in slow motion and let all this clutter go away and you emerge coming through the light? When your definiteness of purpose is strong enough, you become like Moses, stand by the ocean, and it would open up for you. I mean, the questions we ask ourselves, the answers are always there. You just have to ask your right question. And again, your why has to be big enough. My why was big enough. And I think I didn't cover this, but when I got hired by United eventually after the interview, at age 28, Jacob, I became the youngest 747 pilot. The dream had gone full circle, and it was mine. I dreamed it at the age of 9. No matter what life threw at me, I focused, kept squaring my shoulders like a running back. No matter how much, it's not how you're going to fall down. You're going to bruise your knees. You're going to get muddy. That is not important. The important thing is how many times you get up and get knocked down again. How do you create that frame of mind that I'm not going to quit? Thomas Edison, 10,000 failures. Can you imagine if you quit? What would be? Colonel Sanders, for example, Kentucky Fried Chicken, changed the eating habit of the whole world 30 years ago. I'm not saying his food is good or I'm marketing for him. At age 65, he got his check from the Social Security. He said, I ain't going to live on this. At 65, he started a new business and changed the eating habit of the whole world. One of the most gratifying things to me has been through social media, but two things that I tell you. There was a doctor, one of my followers, contacted me on a DM, direct messaging, but I was just building up, I've got like 400,000 or 500,000 people as followers or friends, I should call them. And this one doctor, I happen to see his messages. Sometimes I can't. I open my mouth to 2 million, 4 million, 5 million people like it, and I get 10,000, 15,000 remarks or comments, I should say. And I can't respond to them. So I just go on and tell people, hey, I love you. I see all of this. I really appreciate it. Just let me do my thing. Let me keep putting more and more material out. And right now I've been a little quiet on the social media because, because of the book and podcasts and YouTube, things are really heating up. So this doctor contacted me and said, Captain, you've been a captain. I mean, I've been a doctor for as long as you've been a pilot. And throughout my career, I have saved 8 people, which is great. And he said, in one flight, you saved 381 souls. He said, that's amazing. I have a Jewish friend. He says in Hebrew, it says, if you save one life, it's like you have saved the whole world. You have saved 381 lives. It's like you have saved the world 381 times. So going back to what I was saying about social media, 5 people have contacted me, say, Captain, because of your positiveness, because of your drive for excellence and teaching us success principles, teaching us leadership, teaching us not giving up, defying these things that, want to crush you. And because of you, we stop committing suicide. 5 people. Isn't that something? That your words, for a guy who was born in a small village, not even in a big city, to come all the way to the United States, become a captain, save 381 lives, and the words that is not even my mother language, for my words, Jacob, to impact people in a way that give them a new life, make them stop from taking their own lives.
Anybody is out there is ever having thoughts of suicide or self-harm, there's a number in the United States you can call called 988. It's very helpful. And you're going to continue to save lives and touch hearts and inspire lives as you have mine. And I just want to thank you for your friendship and your mentorship and the opportunity I've had to interview you. It's wonderful. I've read your book. I was one of the first to read the book when it wasn't even in print yet.
Yeah, I think you're on the back of the book too. After the book, you asked, I didn't never finished it. My story, my life story, and United 1175 is going to be made into a movie. And my new career is a keynote speaker. Guys, go to CaptainBehnam.com. Anywhere social media, you can go on to Captain Behnam, Captain Behnam Official, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's YouTube, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Instagram. Send us a message. But most importantly, go to the website and send us a message if you wanted to be interviewed on this show. If you have a request for me coming to a keynote speech or speaking engagement, they are building up. I'm getting booked up going forward. And of course, for all of you guys that know me and have heard me, I would love for you to go to subscribe to the YouTube channel so we can get this great message out and interviewing a lot of wonderful, wonderful people going forward.
So it's been such a wonderful opportunity to sit down and speak with you today. Brother Behnam, Captain Behnam, love you, brother. You take care. Right?
Love you too. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being here and letting me share my stories through you to the rest of the world. I'll talk to you later, buddy.